A brief introduction to the history of Sudan. Sudan is a very ancient country. It's actually presently one of the largest countries in the world and definitely the largest country in Africa. If you look at the country, you can roughly divide it into two pieces. Within the middle, flowing the Nile. In the northern part, a desert part, and the southern part, you find a more swampy and Nile-induced watery part. If you look historically at Sudan, it has an old history. It goes back all the way to the ancient Egyptians, and in fact, part of the Egyptians were ruled over by the Nubians who came from Sudan, and you can find pyramids within the Sudan. Now, if you fast forward a little bit through history and you come towards the time that the Egyptian Empire collapsed and the Turkish people took over, the Ottoman Empire ruled, Sudan was always treated like a fiefdom, an area from which you could conquer. You could get slaves, you can get gum arabicum, you can get all kinds of free goodies. Moving on, once the Ottoman kingdom collapsed, it was the British that took over, but even they could not rule over the whole of Sudan. It was way too big for that. So areas like Darfur were ruled from a long distance, from a joystick or from a long distance, and several areas that were closer to the capital, Khartoum, which is on the confluence of the White and the Blue Nile, were ruled directly. Now, with the onset of Islam in Saudi Arabia around 650, traders used to come all the way from Saudi Arabia, trek to the west of Africa, and move back. In process, not only trading, but also setting up mosques and converting people to Islam. It's therefore that the northern part of Sudan is mainly Islamic. It's along the camel trekking route. On the way in the south, you can see that a large group of people were converted from 1850 onwards by Christian missionaries, and therefore the south, which has about 10 million people, and the north has about 28 million people, is mainly Christian or animist. And this is part of the split. And if you go again fast forward and you end up in 1956, when the English finally give up their might, the Sudanese were very cunning. They managed to play off the English against the Egyptians and the French and the Americans, and so they got their own independence. Egypt always wanted Sudan as a part of the country, so they had control over the Nile, which to them is the most important part of life. It gives them life, literally, with the grains and the fertile valleys. But Sudan became independent, and it is there that straight away in 1956, that a civil war starts. The Anyanya movement, or the Copperhead Snake movement, started because the southern people were discriminated against, that there was no sharing of revenue, and actually they were still discriminated, and what was called slave raids were still taking place, and people could not practice their own religion as Sharia law was imposed all over Sudan. This war went on for about 22 years, 17 years, 22 years, and then there was 8 years of peace, and then another war broke out, and this time it was called the Sudanese People Liberation Army, that fought for 22 years until the year 2005. In all those battles, never the North could control the entire South, but never could the South, the rebel or the freedom fighters, take over the whole of the South or even the North. One of the reasons that this conflict is so enduring is the fact that the oil, the moneymaker in Sudan, is located in the South, and the revenues from that oil all go to the North. It's sad, but it's true. 2005, a peace agreement started, and it's then that the northern government could turn their attention to Darfur, and they started what we can call ethnic cleansing, as a politically correct word, or genocide, or basically mass murder, mass rape, mass displacement of people, fighting against children and women. Now, if this were new, it would be sad, but it's not new. It's even worse. This is the pattern by which the small group in power in the Sudan will fight. These are the Jale tribes. It consists out of 3% of the population, which control 90% of the army, the police, the secret services, the economy, and are not willing to share anything of their power. They come together in an organization or political party called the National Congress Party that has been in power for 19 years after a military coup started by the present dictator, or you can call him President Omar al-Bashir. Well, Darfur happened. Nubian people got attacked on the basis of their Christianity in the 1980s. Then the Bija people, who are independent or Muslim light, got attacked in the east of the country, and basically every single part and parcel of Sudan has been attacked by the people of the NCP. They're brilliant in rule and divide, divide et impera, and I wish they were less good at it, but they're just phenomenally good at it. Now, what is the future of Sudan? Right now, a census has taken place, and the results are yet to be revealed. This is done so people in Sudan know how many people live where, and so an election can be done 2009, which will be for the whole country. Hopefully the SPLM will win this election, which is a southern party which has now extended its reach to the northern part, eastern part, the central part, and the western part of the country. Besides that, in 2011, part and parcel of the peace agreement was that after 6 years of ruling together, the SPLM would rule with the NCP and give an opportunity to the people in the south to decide if they want to go on an independent path as a new South Sudan, or they should stay together in one united new Sudan. I just came back from a conference of the SPLM, and I think the path of the SPLM would be to try and focus for a united new Sudan. But if it doesn't work out, and clearly with attacks on Abyei even only 2 weeks ago, Abyei, a border city which has oil, has been attacked by the NCP troops, the SAF, which burned down the entire village, and the village no longer exists. 100,000 people as a consequence have fled to the south, and Antonov airplanes are flying over their heads. And I can personally tell you that's a pretty scary and harrowing experience to have Antonov flying over you and being bombed by Antonov. So even though there is a government of national unity, it doesn't seem that the unity counts for people who live in border areas or in the south. I pray for the best, and I hope for peace, but it seems that another war is inevitable. Let's hope that people in the south find their way out in a peaceful way, and if not, then conflict will be the way out, I'm afraid. But that's a brief introduction to the history of Sudan.